My name is Eleanor. I'm 62 years old, and I've spent the last 3 decades building something I thought would outlast me, a family legacy. My late husband James and I worked tirelessly to create financial security for our children and their families. James passed away 4 years ago after a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone in the large house we'd shared in Portland, Oregon, with memories in every corner and decisions I never thought I'd have to make alone. Among those decisions was what to do with the considerable estate we'd accumulated: the house, investments, savings, and a small rental property portfolio that had grown steadily over the years. James and I had been intentional about our finances. We'd both come from modest backgrounds and understood the value of hard work and careful planning. James had been an engineer, and I'd worked as a school administrator until I retired 5 years ago. Together, we'd built something substantial, not through inheritance or luck, but through decades of discipline and smart choices. We'd always planned to leave everything to our 2 sons, divided equally, because that seemed fair and simple. But life, I've learned, is rarely simple. My older son, Marcus, is 40 years old and works as a teacher in Seattle. He married his college sweetheart, Lisa, and they have 2 children, 10-year-old Sophie and 8-year-old Daniel. Marcus inherited his father's quiet steadiness and my love of learning. He's never been motivated by money, choosing a career in education despite knowing it would never make him wealthy. Lisa works part-time as a nurse, and together they live modestly in a small house, always stretched thin financially, but genuinely happy. They visit regularly, and my grandchildren light up my world with their curiosity and warmth. My younger son, Brandon, is 37 and works in tech sales in San Francisco. He's always been more ambitious than Marcus, more driven by success and status. He married Vanessa 6 years ago, a woman who works in marketing and shares his appetite for the finer things in life. They have 1 daughter, 4-year-old Olivia, whom I rarely see despite my repeated invitations to visit. Brandon and Vanessa live in an expensive condo, drive luxury cars, and post constantly on social media about their glamorous lifestyle. On the surface, they appear successful, but I've always sensed something hollow beneath the shine. After James died, I threw myself into reorganizing my life. I updated my will with my attorney, making sure everything was in order. The original plan was simple: split everything 50-50 between Marcus and Brandon. It seemed fair, mathematical, clean. But over the past few years, I'd begun to notice things that troubled me deeply, things that made me question whether equal distribution was actually equitable. Marcus and Lisa visited often, sometimes driving down from Seattle for just a weekend to check on me. They'd help with house maintenance, spend time talking with me about their lives, and include me in their children's activities. When Sophie had a school play, they made sure I had a front row seat. When Daniel started Little League, Marcus sent me videos of every game. They never asked about my finances or my plans for the estate. Their concern for me felt genuine and unconditional. Brandon and Vanessa, on the other hand, visited maybe twice a year, and those visits felt increasingly transactional. Conversations would inevitably turn to the real estate market, to investment strategies, to casual mentions of how expensive their life in San Francisco had become. Vanessa would comment on how big my house was for 1 person, how valuable the property must be, how I should really think about downsizing. The subtext was always clear. They were thinking about inheritance, about what they stood to gain when I was gone. What really opened my eyes happened about 8 months ago. I'd been having some health issues, nothing serious, but enough to require some tests and doctor visits. I'd mentioned it casually during one of Brandon's rare phone calls. 2 weeks later, they showed up unannounced on a Saturday afternoon, claiming they'd been in the area and wanted to check on me. This was unusual enough to raise my suspicions, but I welcomed them in, happy to see my son and granddaughter despite the strange timing. We had lunch, and the conversation remained light until Vanessa asked if I'd given any thought to organizing my affairs, given my recent health concerns. I explained that everything was already organized, that I had a will and all my documents in order. She pressed further, asking specific questions about whether I'd considered the tax implications of estate distribution and whether I'd thought about giving gifts to family members while I was still alive to maximize the benefit. Brandon seemed uncomfortable with her directness, but didn't stop her. I deflected as politely as I could, saying my attorney had everything handled. After they left, I felt unsettled. The visit hadn't been about checking on my health at all. It had been reconnaissance about my assets. That incident made me start paying closer attention. I noticed that Vanessa's calls and texts to me increased after that visit, always friendly, but often steering conversation toward my property, my investments, my plans. She'd send me articles about estate planning with subject lines like, "Thought you might find this useful." She'd mention in passing how much Brandon worked, how expensive childcare was, how they were barely scraping by despite their six-figure combined income. The implication was always the same. They needed money, and they were counting on inheritance to solve their problems. Meanwhile, Marcus and Lisa never mentioned money. When I'd offered to help them with a down payment on a larger house, Marcus had actually declined, saying they wanted to do it themselves. When Lisa's car broke down and I'd insisted on paying for repairs, she'd cried and promised to pay me back, which I'd told her was unnecessary. They didn't view me as a bank account or an asset to be liquidated. They viewed me as family. The breaking point came 3 months ago. I decided to visit Brandon and Vanessa in San Francisco, thinking that maybe spending more time with them would help me understand their perspective, maybe even repair what felt like a fracturing relationship. I'd called ahead to let them know I was coming, but when I arrived at their building a day early due to a changed flight, I'd used the key they'd given me for emergencies and let myself in, planning to surprise them. I heard voices coming from their home office, the door slightly ajar. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name and froze. When Eleanor finally kicks it, we'll get at least $1 million, maybe more depending on how the real estate appreciates. That was Vanessa's voice, casual and matter-of-fact. "Don't talk about my mother like that." Brandon's voice, but weak, not really challenging her. "Oh, please. I'm just being realistic. She's 62 and having health issues. Probably another 10 years, maybe 15 if she's stubborn. That house alone is worth at least $800,000. And then there's all the investment accounts. We're talking serious money, Brandon. Finally, we can stop living like we're broke." "We're not broke, Vanessa. We make good money. And we spend good money maintaining the lifestyle we deserve. But imagine what we could do with a real cash infusion. We could buy that place in Tahoe we've been looking at, get a better car, finally take that European vacation. Your mother's been hoarding that wealth long enough. It's time it got put to good use. She's splitting everything with Marcus. We'll only get half." Vanessa laughed, a sharp sound that made me flinch. "Marcus is a teacher, married to a part-time nurse. What are they going to do with $1 million? They'll probably use it to buy a slightly less crappy house in Seattle. It's wasted on them. We actually know how to leverage money, how to make it work for us. We should get more. You need to talk to your mother about changing her will. I can't just ask her to give me more than my brother. You don't ask directly. You plant seeds. You talk about how hard you work, how expensive our life is, how much Olivia's private school costs. You make her see that we need it more. Come on, Brandon, you're good at sales. Sell her on the idea that an equal split isn't a fair split." There was silence. I waited for Brandon to defend me, to defend his brother, to say something that would restore my faith in him. Instead, he sighed. "I'll think about it. But Marcus would never forgive me. Marcus will be fine. He's used to having less. Besides, once the money's distributed, what's he going to do about it? You're her son too. You deserve your fair share, and in this family, fair should mean proportional to need, not just splitting things down the middle." I'd heard enough. I quietly left the building, texted Brandon that my flight had been delayed and I'd have to reschedule the visit, and spent the 3-hour flight home in a state of shock and grief. This was my son and his wife, casually discussing my death like a business transaction, calculating their inheritance like quarterly earnings, plotting to manipulate me into disinheriting their own family. When I got home, I sat in James's study, surrounded by his books and photographs, and cried for hours. Not just for the betrayal, but for what it revealed about the values we'd apparently failed to instill in our younger son. Somewhere along the way, Brandon had become someone who measured love in dollar signs, who saw his family as assets to be acquired rather than people to be cherished. I spent the next week re-evaluating everything. I looked through years of interactions with fresh eyes, seeing patterns I'd ignored or excused. The way Vanessa had lobbied for expensive gifts for Olivia's birthdays while discouraging me from spoiling Sophie and Daniel. The way Brandon had stopped calling just to talk and only reached out when he wanted something or when discussing my future plans. the way they'd gradually distanced themselves from family gatherings where money wasn't the focus. I also looked at Marcus and Lisa with new appreciation. They'd never asked for anything, never expected anything, never viewed my eventual death as a financial opportunity. They loved me for who I was, not what I could give them. Their visits were about connection, not calculation. Their children knew me as Grandma Eleanor, who told stories and baked cookies, not as a source of future wealth. I called my attorney, Richard, who'd handled our family's legal matters for 20 years. I told him everything and said I wanted to change my will. He listened carefully, then asked the question I'd been wrestling with. Eleanor, are you sure about this? These kinds of changes can create permanent family rifts. The rift already exists, Richard. I'm just acknowledging it. My question is this: is it wrong to reward the child who's treated me with genuine love and punish the one who sees me as a bank account? It's not about right or wrong, he said gently. It's about what you feel is just. Your assets are yours to distribute as you see fit, but I want you to be certain, because once you're gone, this will be your final message to your sons. I spent another month thinking, praying, and soul-searching. I even went to therapy to talk through my feelings with someone objective. My therapist asked me what I hoped to accomplish with my decision, what message I wanted to send. After several sessions, I knew what I had to do. I revised my will with very specific instructions. The bulk of my estate would go to Marcus, the house, 70% of my investment portfolio, and the rental properties. Brandon would receive 30% of the investments and some personal items. But there was a crucial addition. I wrote detailed letters to both sons explaining my decision, to be opened after my death. I needed them to understand that this wasn't about punishing Brandon, but about rewarding genuine love and acknowledging that inheritance should reflect relationship, not just biology. I didn't tell anyone about the changes. Richard filed the new will, and I went on with my life. Though carrying this secret felt heavy, I continued my relationships with both sons as before, though I found myself pulling back slightly from Brandon and Vanessa, unable to unhear what I'd overheard. They didn't seem to notice, too wrapped up in their own lives to register my increased distance. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I made a mistake that changed everything. I'd been feeling nostalgic and had pulled out old family photo albums. I called Marcus first, and we spent an hour on the phone laughing about memories and looking at pictures together. When we hung up, I impulsively called Brandon. He was busy, as usual, but I asked if he had just a few minutes to reminisce with me. Mom, I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait? I suppose so. I just miss you, sweetheart. There was a pause. Is everything okay? Are you having more health issues? And there it was. His concern wasn't about me missing him, but about whether my health was declining, whether the inheritance timeline was accelerating. Something in me snapped. I'm fine, Brandon. Perfectly healthy, actually. The doctor says I could live another 30 years. Oh, well, that's great. I really do need to go, though. Love you. He hung up quickly, and I sat there with the phone in my hand, realizing that my test had been answered. 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was Marcus, calling back because he'd found an old photograph he wanted to describe to me, just to share the memory. The contrast was so stark, it was almost painful. That evening, I'd had several glasses of wine, more than usual. I was feeling emotional and reckless. Against my better judgment, I called Brandon again. This time, Vanessa answered his phone. Eleanor! Hi, Brandon's in the shower. Everything okay? The wine had loosened my tongue. Vanessa, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot about my estate planning. I heard her voice sharpen with interest. Oh? Are you making changes? I've already made them, actually. I just wanted you to know that I've been very thoughtful about how to distribute everything fairly, based on relationships and need. That sounds very wise, Eleanor. I'm sure whatever you've decided is fair. Her voice had that false sweetness I'd come to recognize. I think it is. Marcus and Lisa have been so attentive, so caring. They never ask for anything, but they give so much. I wanted to make sure they're taken care of. There was a brief pause. Of course, they're wonderful. But Brandon works so hard too, and Olivia's expenses are considerable. Everyone will be taken care of appropriately, I said, deliberately vague. I just wanted you to know that I've been paying attention to everything, including conversations people think I don't hear. Another pause, longer this time. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. Anyway, I should go. Tell Brandon I called. I hung up, immediately regretting my words. The wine had made me indiscreet, had revealed that I knew more than I should. I just tipped my hand, let them know that their calculations might be wrong. The next morning, nursing a headache, I saw that Brandon had called me twice and sent several texts asking what I'd meant, saying we needed to talk. I ignored them, needing time to think about how to handle what I'd inadvertently revealed. 2 days later, I had to go to my attorney's office to sign some unrelated documents. The building had an odd layout with a back entrance near the parking garage that I sometimes used. As I was leaving through that exit, I heard voices around the corner in the parking garage. I recognized them immediately, Brandon and Vanessa. I stopped, hidden by a concrete pillar, not intending to eavesdrop, but finding myself unable to move. She basically told me she's leaving everything to Marcus. Everything, Brandon. Vanessa's voice was high with agitation. She didn't say that exactly. She said everyone would be taken care of appropriately. Read between the lines. She knows we were counting on that money. And that comment about hearing conversations she shouldn't hear? She was at our place. She must have heard us talking. Oh, God. Brandon's voice sounded sick. How much did she hear? Does it matter? She's clearly planning to screw us over in favor of your perfect brother and his mediocre little family. We need to fix this, Brandon. You need to go see her. Smooth things over. Make her see reason. Make her see reason? Vanessa, she's my mother, not a client. And this is millions of dollars we're talking about. Do you understand what this means for our future? For Olivia's future? We've been planning on this inheritance. We've made financial decisions based on it. You mean you've made purchases based on money we don't have yet and might never have? Oh, don't you dare put this on me. You were right there agreeing when we bought the new car, when we booked the Hawaii trip, when we enrolled Olivia in that private school. You wanted all of it too. But I never thought... Brandon's voice trailed off. What? You never thought your mother would play favorites? Well, she is, and we're on the wrong side of it. Unless you do something. You need to go to her, apologize for whatever she heard, tell her it was taken out of context, remind her that you love her. Manipulate her if you have to. I don't care. But fix this. There was a long silence. I held my breath, waiting for Brandon to push back, to defend me, to show some shred of the values his father and I had tried to teach him. Instead, I heard defeat. I'll try to talk to her, but Mom's stubborn. If she's made up her mind, then unmake it. God, Brandon, grow a spine. This is your inheritance, your birthright. Don't just let Marcus take it all because he played the good son. I'd heard enough. I slipped back inside the building, used the front entrance instead, and sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to process what I'd just heard. They weren't even pretending it was about a relationship with me anymore. It was purely transactional. I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be overcome, a resource to be secured. That evening, Brandon called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again the next day, and the next. I finally answered on the 4th attempt. Mom, we need to talk. Can I come visit this weekend? I'm actually quite busy, Brandon. Please, Mom, it's important. Something in his voice, desperation tinged with something that might have been genuine distress, made me agree. All right, Saturday afternoon. Just you, please. Not Vanessa. She wants to come too, to apologize if she said anything that upset you. Just you, Brandon, or not at all. He agreed reluctantly. Saturday came, and Brandon arrived looking nervous. We sat in the living room where he'd grown up, surrounded by family photographs that told the story of a childhood I thought had been happy. He launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about how much he loved me, how sorry he was if anything he or Vanessa had said had been misconstrued, how he was under so much stress with work and finances that sometimes things came out wrong. I let him finish, then asked simply, "Do you love me, Brandon? Or do you love what I can give you?" He looked stricken. "Mom, of course I love you. You're my mother. Then why does every conversation we have eventually turn to money? Why do you only visit when you want something? Why did your wife celebrate on the phone about my eventual death and the inheritance it would bring?" His face went pale. "You heard that. In San Francisco. You were there. I was there. I heard everything. And then I heard you in the parking garage the other day discussing how to manipulate me into changing my will in your favor. Mom, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain, Brandon. Your actions have explained everything. I've changed my will, yes, but not because I want to punish you. I changed it because inheritance should reflect relationship, not just biology. Marcus has been a son to me in every way that matters. You've been a business associate hoping for a profitable return on investment. Tears were streaming down his face now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Vanessa, she gets in my head, and Vanessa isn't the problem, Brandon, or she's not the only problem. You're a grown man who makes his own choices. You chose to see me as a bank account instead of your mother. You chose to calculate the value of my death instead of treasuring the time we have together. Please don't cut me out entirely. Please. I softened slightly, seeing genuine remorse for perhaps the first time. I'm not cutting you out, Brandon. You'll receive a portion of the estate, but the bulk will go to Marcus because that's what's fair. Not equal, but fair. There's a difference. He left shortly after, defeated and emotional. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to take back everything I'd said, to pretend I'd never heard those conversations. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt and disappointed and reduced to a dollar figure in my own son's mind, held firm. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Brandon started calling regularly, not to discuss money or estates, but just to talk. He came to visit twice, bringing Olivia, and spent genuine time with me, helping me with projects around the house, looking through old photographs, sharing meals. At first, I was skeptical, wondering if this was another manipulation tactic. But as weeks turned into months, his consistency suggested something might be shifting. During one visit, he broke down completely. I've been in therapy, he admitted. Individual therapy, not couples. I needed to figure out how I became this person, someone who would calculate their mother's death like a business opportunity. I'm so ashamed, Mom. Vanessa and we got caught up in this lifestyle that we couldn't really afford, and instead of scaling back, we just kept hoping for some big windfall to save us. I let her convince me that we deserved your money, that we needed it more than Marcus did. But deserving isn't about need, it's about relationship. And I failed at that relationship. You're working on it now, I said carefully. Am I too late? I thought about that question, about forgiveness and consequences and grace. I don't know, Brandon. Time will tell. But I can tell you this. My will reflects our relationship as it has been, not as it might become. That won't change. But our actual relationship, the one we have while I'm still here, that can change, if you want it to. I do. I really do. Not because of money, but because I miss having a mom. I miss being the son you raised, the one who called just to share good news or ask advice, not the one who saw you as a trust fund. Since then, things have been different. Not perfect, but different. Brandon visits more often, and the visits feel genuine. Vanessa has pulled back, which I suspect means Brandon has finally set some boundaries with her about me and our family. I don't know if their marriage will survive his transformation, but that's not my concern. What matters is that my son is finding his way back to the person he was before greed and status consumed him. Marcus, meanwhile, remains oblivious to all the drama. He continues to be himself, steady, loving, present. I've considered telling him about the will, about why I made the choices I made, but I've decided against it. He doesn't need that burden, doesn't need to feel guilty about receiving more or anxious about his brother's reaction. He'll understand when the time comes, through the letter I've written him. I'm healthier now than I was a year ago, the health scare having been minor and resolved. I might have another 20 or 30 years ahead of me, but whenever my time comes, I know my final act as a mother will be a lesson, one last teaching moment about what truly matters. The inheritance split isn't about money, it's about value, not the value of assets, but the value of presence, of genuine care, of love that doesn't come with calculations attached. It's about acknowledging that not all children contribute equally to their parents' lives, and pretending they do by splitting everything 50-50 is a lie that serves no one. When I die, Marcus will receive most of my estate, not because I love him more, but because he loved me better. Brandon will receive less not as punishment, but as consequence and lesson. And both will receive letters explaining that inheritance is earned through relationship, through showing up, through valuing people over possessions. I heard my daughter-in-law celebrate my eventual death as a financial opportunity, and that moment changed everything. It showed me that equal distribution would reward the wrong values and ignore the right ones. It taught me that fairness isn't always about equality. Sometimes it's about justice. And justice, in this case, means leaving my legacy to the son who understood that the greatest inheritance I could give wasn't money at all. It was love, freely given and gratefully received. That's the lesson I hope Brandon finally learns, even if it costs him a fortune, because some lessons are worth every penny.